First, before I get started, I just wanted to thank Simber for all of the years of work that you've done to support active members, veterans, not only of our military, but also the families that support the members in uniform. And as we start to work with PSP and our first responders, these events and the ongoing work is it's invaluable. And I've witnessed the benefits on the ground, and so to be here is quite an honor. So thank you guys very much for what you do. And without further ado, I will get into why I am standing here today. A little bit of background in this. I spent most of my career working with males. Actually, up until very recently, I only worked with males because the units that I supported there weren't females there. And as females started to arrive, people looked to me and they go, well, you're female, so you can help them. And that I felt completely unqualified. Just because I'm a female doesn't mean I actually know what is going on. So I turned to the literature, and there wasn't anything on females either. And so working with the individuals, we really had to learn on the fly together of how are we gonna do this? How are we going to keep you effective to be able to do your job? And how are we going to keep you effective to take care of your family and give you a life at home that you can actually interact with? So that led me to this question. Is a history of childbirth related to musculoskeletal injuries in Canadian Armed Forces members? And musculoskeletal injury and after childbirth are two main points of attrition for the Canadian Armed Forces. And so looking at these together, it made a lot of sense to me. And green means next. Okay, perfect. So my name is Chris. I am funded by that scholarship, by the Queen Elizabeth Graduate Scholarship. And the projects that I will be discussing today were funded by IDEAS. We also received a lot of support from PSP, not the First Responders Group, but CFMWS PSP, and the Canadian Armed Forces as well. And I have no biases to mitigate. My learning objectives for you all today, I hope that you can go home with a couple of key messages. So one, a history of childbirth is associated with musculoskeletal injury in Canadian Armed Forces members. Female CAF members who continue to serve after injury and after childbirth actually perform better on physical fitness tests than their nully pairs peers when we match for injury. So that's not what we would expect. And the last thing is when we look at non-military populations, these relationships actually don't continue. Most of you are from the Canadian Armed Forces and Defence world, but not everyone is, so I'll just give you a little bit of situational awareness. Organizational structure of the Canadian Armed Forces. We have the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, we have CAN-SOFCOM, and then all of those elements are supported by tri-service purple trades. So a purple trade member could work in the Army for 3 years, then they can move into supporting the Air Force, and these are typically health services and logistics, and there are a number of other trades that are affiliated in that, but these individuals are They have unique occupational demands, and through their entire career, those occupational demands change. So in my mind, they deserve special attention. Also, something that is unique about the purple trades is that over half of the females that are enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces are in this category. So when we move into the physical fitness stuff, that is all purple trade members that I'm speaking about, okay? The other definition that we need to look at is musculoskeletal injury. Musculoskeletal injury, there isn't a consistent definition in the literature, and so for you today, I will be speaking about two different types, acute injuries and repetitive strain injuries. Acute injuries, there's a clear mechanism. A repetitive strain injury is accumulation of trauma over time. These repetitive strain injuries are of particular interest to me because by definition, they happen over time, which means there are multiple time points where we could intervene and we can either prevent them from becoming an injury, or we can reduce the burden that these injuries are going to have on the individual and ultimately on their operational effectiveness. I love this visual representation that was just published last year. This summarizes the risk factors that we know are associated with musculoskeletal injury in military populations. You'll notice that on the left, we've got MOS, so military occupation specialty. We've got branch, so element. We have previous injury. So previous injury is one of the greatest predictors for future injury. And then lastly, we have biological sex. Now, I hope that after this, you question that, because I do, and this is why. Given that the majority of the retrieved studies either were not conducted in women, or if women were included, they were a part of a larger training group that was treated as a whole group at the time of the analysis, we have been unable to discuss the following results in the context of sex differences. This summarizes everything that I've seen so far on military research pertaining to physical health, whether it be a musculoskeletal injury or otherwise. When we look at the Canadian Armed Forces, this was just actually published this summer from our group at Ottawa. Musculoskeletal injuries in the Army and the Air Force by repetitive strain and acute injuries. You notice that in red we have the injuries, the body regions that are more susceptible to females, but in green are more susceptible to males. So yeah, females might be more susceptible to some injuries, but not all of them. And in some cases, males are sustaining these injuries more. So again, biological sex is important, but does it mean that females are sustaining more? I don't think that we can say that. There are a couple of reasons why these differences might exist. One of them is anatomical differences. The cervical spine, the thoracic spine of a female and a male are different. They respond differently to trauma. Their outcomes will also be different. So there's the obvious there, but we also need to consider reproductive health hormones, or reproductive hormones. So in females, we know that irregular menstruation or irregular menstrual cycles are associated with repetitive strain injuries, and we also see that endometriosis increases the likelihood of someone sustaining a musculoskeletal injury as well. Another reproductive health component that we should probably consider is pregnancy. Through pregnancy, there are a number of changes that happen to a female. We see anatomical differences, we see biomechanical differences, physiological differences, whole life differences, and all of those things combine, and in my mind it makes a lot of sense that these factors might increase someone's likelihood of being injured in the future. We haven't actually looked at this before, so here we are. The boxes are around the areas, the changes that occur through pregnancy that I'm particularly interested in. I'll bring your attention to the top right corner, the decreased gluteus maximus activation. The glute max plays a key role in stabilizing the pelvis, the spine, and also plays a key role in force transfer through the body. So in a performance context, we really need the glute max to be strong and working well. If someone is in their second trimester, we see that their ability to activate the glute max is less. And we also see that beyond the postpartum period, this activation actually doesn't return to pre-pregnancy levels. So that would be an area for physical training to reactivate that brain-body connection. But it also might be making someone more susceptible to injury down the line. Which leads me to, is parity status increasing our risk of injury in our female members? And for definition purposes, on the left, we've got nulliparous, so that would be a female member who has never given birth and never carried a pregnancy beyond 20 weeks. Pregnancy, they are currently pregnant. And then parous would be an individual who's had at least one baby, so they've carried a pregnancy beyond 20 weeks. After 20 weeks, we would consider that person parous, regardless if the baby is born or not. This is actually the work that I presented last year, and this is the relationship between those who have given birth and those who haven't, and the injuries that are occurring. So on the left-hand side, you can see the rates for nulliparous and parous females who have given birth. The red is overall, the red is parous, the gray is nulliparous, so nulliparous being someone who's never given birth, and then the darker color is total. Yes, there are differences here, but also these rates are really high. 34%, so almost 35% of our female membership are sustaining lower back injuries. Whether there's a difference or not, I think we really need to pay attention to the overall number as well as the differences between males and females. We also see a significant difference in repetitive strain injuries at the wrist, the foot, and overall, but that's part of the story, but a really large part of the story is actually how prevalent these injuries are in our female members. Okay. This top point here, so again, as I said before, the main points of attrition in a female calf member is after an injury and then also after returning from having a baby. Those who have had a repetitive strain injury and given birth report greater negative impacts on their daily life from their injuries. So not only are they more likely to sustain a repetitive strain injury, but they're also more likely to be negatively affected by this. So it would make sense that they are more likely to leave. Regardless of parity status, only 75% are reporting their repetitive strain injuries. That might seem like a large number, but that means that 25% aren't reporting their repetitive strain injuries to a medical health provider. So we can't help you if we don't know. But why aren't we reporting this? And what culture changes, what conversations do we need to have to increase this number? If we look at acute injuries, it's above 90% reporting, right? So there's something around repetitive strain injuries that is acting as a barrier to seeking help. And my favorite thing is just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. So maybe that in itself is a good starting point. And lastly, in this same project, we asked questions around miscarriage and pregnancy-related complications, and I looked at their relationship with a musculoskeletal injury. And miscarriage, postpartum depression, and preterm birth were all associated with musculoskeletal injuries being sustained during military service. So physical fitness might be part of the conversation, but miscarriage, postpartum depression, preterm birth, that's beyond the scope of an exercise physiologist and an exercise scientist. This is, we really need a multidisciplinary approach if we're going to effectively address this. Moving into the physical fitness, so we like to think that musculoskeletal injuries, okay, so they must not be physically fit, they must not be physically able to interact with their environment, possibly. But when we match for a previous injury and we look at is a history of childbirth associated with physical fitness outcomes, the stereotype that I've been exposed to is that once you've had a kid, you're not going to be able to do as well as someone who hasn't, or you're not going to be able to perform as well as you did before. And our research shows that that's actually not true. The active duty members who have had an injury and given birth performed better than those who had the same injuries and not given birth. And this led to a lot of questions in my mind, which led me to, we're missing something. A question that I often get asked is, well, okay, maybe it's to do with during pregnancy physical activity, the training that they're getting exposed to, and also in the postpartum period. Maybe. 27% of our active duty members stop training altogether during pregnancy. To me, that's a problem because in Canada, our physical activity guidelines recommend at least 150 minutes a week of physical activity. 49.3% continued PT but didn't get any modifications or support. If you look at the paper that is associated with this, that we have the majority of them wanted support but didn't know where to get it. And last, only just over 6% received specialized training. This is a great opportunity for future interventions, somewhat disappointing when I was looking at this and really trying to advocate for supporting our female members. And so I know that there are a lot of new initiatives that have been made, and there are the Women's Health Directive and PSP with CFMWS has started postpartum and pregnancy training. So there's a lot being done on this research. So that's exciting as we went from we've got the data to, okay, we're developing programs quite quickly. So that is exciting, at least in my mind.
And this morning we heard about PSP program, or PSP and military. So in my mind, PSP is with CFMWS because that's where I'm from. So I'm going to use first responder just so that I can speak a little bit more clearly on it. So I compared this data to first responders and healthcare workers after doing that initial project with the CAF, because it didn't make sense to me. If we are telling ourselves and if we are telling others that after you've given birth, you're not going to be able to be as fit as you were before, and you aren't going to be able to perform as well as your nulliparous peers, mentally, that is a huge barrier. And if that's not true, we need to change that story right away. And how far does this story reach? So can we actually apply this to the civilians, and can we be informed by civilian practices to move forward in the CAF context? And no. The nulliparous group in the first responders and healthcare workers actually performed better. So this is what we were seeing, or what we thought we would see in the CAF, which leads me to the females who are supporting in the Canadian Armed Forces are unique, and we need specialized supports for them. And moving forward, yes, we can be inspired by the civilian research, and absolutely we should be, to help ask effective questions. And our policies and procedures should probably be based on CAF-specific research until we find out where we can have overlap, right? We don't know where we have overlaps, and we don't know where we need to delineate. And if we set it up right, I think that we can do everyone a little bit more justice and less of a headache down the line when we're having to change things as the evidence comes through. So this is a comparison. It's not a direct comparison, so I just wanted to be clear. This is the CAF-specific comparison between nulliparous and parous females who are actively serving when we don't look at injury history at all. So when we're just looking at have they given birth or not. We see that the nulliparous peers are not performing as well as the parous for lower back endurance. And then when we look at the civilians, so again, first responders, police, firefighters, paramedics, and healthcare providers, we see that those who have not given birth are performing better in upper body strength, lower body power, strength, and less well by the parous members there. Both first responder research and military research often get combined in systematic reviews. I can't speak to what has been done on males because I haven't seen a direct comparison between them. So maybe that is a good idea, maybe it's not. And we haven't seen that in females either. And so this would be really the first direct comparison. And based on that, I would say that we need to err on the side of caution if we are going to combine them in research as well, or at least ask differentiating questions as we roll out projects for both populations. And we love to draw from the sport research. So what are they doing over there in sports medicine? We just saw in Olympics where we had a number of female athletes coming back to sport after pregnancy, and it's pretty incredible. But when we look at elite runners who choose to return to sport after pregnancy are performing equally, if not better, within their 1 to 3 year mark postpartum. So it is possible to train and to provide support for females after pregnancy to get them back to fitness levels that are actually superior to what they were doing before they had children. And I think that is a really good inspiration point for all of us as we move forward. It's possible, now we just have to figure out what questions to ask so we can make this possible for our people as well. And to summarize, physical fitness might be part of the story around why the differences in injuries are happening in the Canadian Armed Forces, but we're definitely missing something. And so, one, I think we need a multidisciplinary approach if we're going to be supporting our females and males through their entire career, so 20, 30, 40 years. We need to start asking questions around their reproduction as well, and considering that having a child, yes, I just outlined some of the differences that occur for females, But males also are experiencing a huge life upheaval when they become parents. And by using the research that we're now doing on females to inspire better questions for males as well, I think that we have a really cool way forward. But we never would have asked these questions if we didn't start asking them about females, I don't think. And last, what about non-military females? Well, we shouldn't probably be using the data that is military-specific and civilian-specific to inform policy, maybe to inspire future work. But at this time, I can't confidently recommend that it's a good idea to group us all together. I would like to thank the Canadian Armed Forces, of course, for the ongoing support for this work and for everything that we are doing at home and abroad. All of the members that have participated in this research. The physical testing was quite extensive. Some of them were there for 4 to 6 hours due to equipment malfunctions. So again, huge thanks to all of them. And CFMWS PSP for providing facilities and logistics support, and then obviously the financial support that we received from IDEA's project made this all possible. So thank you all. And if you have any questions, there's my email. Email me anytime. I love talking about this, obviously. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for letting me speak.